Mark will now do the intro.
Welcome to a coffee club. It's been a few weeks since we did one, and the shift of time zones means it's most definitely a coffee time of day for me now. Um, but we're back, and as you may have heard, just as we kicked off, Rebecca thinks we should know what we're going to talk about today.
Apparently, I'm wrong. Okay.
I think it's the recognition that there's a time for planning and there's a time for we just hit the button to go live.
Yep.
Well, we were just talking about coffee club yesterday, going, it's just a thing we've got to keep because it's fun. We're going to have fun with the conversations. So
Good news is we've done enough of them. We have a habit in place of what we start with. And even better, we have a habit of never actually getting to our agenda after doing that. So I think we've got ourselves covered for this week.
Yep.
So just before we hit the go live button, we were chatting because, of course, we normally start with highlights of the week, and we're at high risk today because Eric hasn't been on a coffee club for a month, and he spent most of that month either deep in reflection on a kayak or deep in reflection sitting in a car driving across 2 countries. But he's only allowed to reference the last week. Eric, highlights.
Highlights for the last week without getting to the 2 amazing things you just talked about that I could give you sunset pictures and mountain pictures and reflections and okay, I suppose. Last week's been a introspective time in a different way. I didn't really share in this venue much, but my partner Chelsea's mother passed away a little over a month ago, and we had the celebration of life over the weekend. And so for me, it's been a week of holding space and facilitating space for others and just helping create the environment for that to occur, helping her dad, helping Chelsea, and coming off the end of most of a month of intentionally not working, not trying to engage my brain on agile things. It put me in a really healthy state to just be present and not be trying to juggle too many things. So I don't know that I so much have highlights from the last week other than the joy of seeing a family come together, extended family on both sides for the first time in probably 10 years. Um, but more just a recognition that it's been a very powerful week for a lot of people and very healing for a lot of people. And coming from that back into bringing my brain into focus on other topics kind of gives a recognition of the precedence of priorities in life and what really matters.
Very nice. How about you, Rebecca?
I thought you might go next because it feels like it would chime right into that connection. But I guess connecting with like the whole like focus on what really matters. I took a longer weekend on purpose to go and spend time just with my husband and celebrating some big life positive moments that we've had. It's a year since we moved. It's a year since he had a really big health thing that impacted us for the entire year. That's really coming together and starting to look positive. It's been a year for all sorts of things. So we went out of town together and dog for the weekend, which is also great because he's back now and he's like completely passed out and just wants to be close to us since he was away for a few days. And just like spend time together, which was really meaningful. And that weekend being like in between 2 weeks of work that are just really big. Like this week is a really big work week, and last week was a really big work week. Put out some new content, new IP, and this week is very, very focused on new things as well. Just a nice little refresher. And I'm excited because like many coffee clubs ago, we talked about product sustainability, and that piece of IP and that new article went live last week or Monday. Yeah, yesterday. So that felt really good too.
And a wonderful article it is. Have you had much feedback on it yet?
Getting a lot of fun like, notes about it. Just everything from like, hey, it's really cool that there's something in the space. My customers have been looking for something like this, or um, over the last year, I've made more connections with people who like it's specifically their role to make sure that their company is looking at sustainable efforts. And so got some call outs from people like that and little messages. So yeah, good so far for the 24 hours it's been out, you know.
Yeah, I appreciated you the tact you took through it, especially since I'm reading Donut Economics right now and reading a lot about regenerative economies and such. It's like, okay, I like where this is coming from.
Mhm. Thanks.
It's 2 books away on my queue. I've I
This is
had
the
it.
problem. It's not meant to be a queue. It's a
Oh,
roadmap.
I had it next, and then I've been following a lot of what Teresa Torres is posting in the product space, and she has some good stuff. And she wrote a book called Continuous Discovery or Continuous Discovery Habits, and I grabbed a copy of that and it jumped the queue, or roadmap, as the case might be. So, I don't know, picking up on the personal side, we are having the very weird experience of being empty nesters for a week. It is the first time in a very long time that my wife and I have been alone in the house for a full week. The youngest, who's the only one still at home, disappeared on us. He's in Canberra meeting politicians. So we are having moments echoing around the house. But in between those moments of echoing, I think my highlight is, well, I guess it's still very personal, but with the new version of Safe City that I planned to originally have fully live before we did the Berlin Safe Summit, I only managed to get the Epic Mischief module out. And over the last week, I've been having a lot of fun polishing up the videos for modules 2 and 3, and finally hit the go live button on that last night, which was very satisfying.
Excited to review that. Visions
Yes,
of Kajabi dancing in my head.
well, the only challenge was with the first module, I did a pattern where I went, oh, there's 4 videos. There's a video, which is, this is how I talk to the briefing deck. There was a setup video, a facilitation video, a debrief video. And I went, yeah, I should just follow that standard. So it meant, putting together 8 videos, 8 PowerPoint decks. The actual simulation bit was easy.
It's kind of a metaphor for a lot of the stuff we talk about. Like doing the thing is actually far easier than trying to get it to be well understood with all of its caveats and the depth and everything else that comes around it.
Yes, particularly when the last version, at least with module 1, I had a lot of facilitation guidance from the original, or the version that I released last 5 or 6 years ago. And I went looking to see what guidance I had for modules 2 and 3, and there was no guidance written for module 2, so that was from scratch. And then module 3, there were, I think, 3 slides, which became in the end about 80 slides between the 4 videos. So
I think finding ways for people to be able to consume what you can explain well with your context and background is definitely an effort. But I also think that's like the thing that makes things actually sticky is not having to have you specifically be the person to be able to explain all those things. it is also, I find it to be really healthy, like thinking through that, like when you create something and then, you have to have somebody else be able to use it and they're like, what? Like you explained it this way in this particular set of words. And to me, that means X, Y, or Z. And then their version of like what that means is totally different from what you thought it meant. So I think it's also really clarifying to do that work.
It's an interesting process, just what it triggers, like putting together the guidance, because I've played the simulation hundreds of times and going through thinking to myself, well, what's everything that's going on in my head while this is happening? And then trying to figure out a way to go, you should be watching out for this. You should pay attention if this happens. You might see that discussion and it'll set up a really good debrief, and trying to actually make explicit all of the things that have just become habitual is, it was quite a process.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially how many of those things, I mean, I'm assuming your brain's like mine, where they've become unknown unknowns or unknown
Yeah.
knowns. Like they're there and you completely forget about them until you hear those 5 words that remind you that that's a thing that happens. Then you have like, oh yeah, let's load that page into memory. There we go. Here's that playbook.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to convey that stuff.
I think that's the part where it is really nice to have a person or set of people who like are not you. Like, I don't know, the last week or so I've been working with some team members to inside the company to take some of the goodness we've got in strategy area and turn it into something other people can learn from. And it's really fun. Mark, you'll like this. Like one of the questions was, "Hey, there's this slide that from the workshop that you ran with me, Mark. Um, how did you like? Can you tell me the words you used to explain the slide so that I can turn it into something else?" And I was like, I'm not going to tell you the words I used to explain that slide in that situation at that summit to that particular audience, but I can think through like the way that would make it explainable to any audience, no matter the situation. And I think that like continue iteration with and trying to like type that out and having them be like, okay, what I think you're trying to explain is this, and so they're rewriting it and how they want to explain it in simpler words, and then having you be like, that's not what I meant. Let's try again. Um, is very refining. Like it's very, very it's really helpful, especially if you're like for me, I explain things in a lot of like images and like I see things in my head and so I'm trying to explain it as it comes out and it comes out with a lot of words like things and stuff and over there. And so it's helpful to have that like sounding board and feedback board to be like, actually, we need to be more concise, more clear, use words that make more sense in very distinct ways so that anybody can pick it up and get it.
Yeah, I used to have a kind of hierarchy in my head for the difficulty of doing that kind of thing back when I did a lot of workshop development and small course development and stuff. And it went something like this. Like there's the time it takes me to do something that I can do once. But if I want to do it repeatably myself, I need 10x the time. And if I want other experts to be able to redo it repeatedly, I need another 10x on top of that. And if I want general capable audience to be able to do it repeatedly, it's another 10x. And it's like, oh yeah, that workshop will take me an hour to develop, or 1,000 hours if I want anybody in the world to be able to deliver it. And it's like that expansion of time to try to get it more and more enabled and more self-running and everything is just, I don't know, it's exhausting, but it's also really powerful content creation for people.
It's the discipline of trying to scale your impact, isn't it?
Indeed. That's why we spent an hour building a pink sheet for a concept that we both thought we knew really well.
Or to be truthful, an hour building about half a pink sheet.
Well, we built a whole one. We just had to split it into two different topics halfway through.
I think it's also like such a sentiment for, or like a testament to why actual user testing really does matter, is no matter how much we think we've interacted with our end users or our end consumers enough that we can put things in their language, it's just not true. No matter how much time you spend. So getting the actual real end user feedback of like, does this make sense? How is this worded? Is this worded in a way that makes you want to keep going and keep working through? And in general, I think that feedback is going to be pretty different than what you assume it will be. Like again, like no matter how much time you spend with them. Um, so I can get you partway there, but it can't be like the don't worry, I'm in their mindset right now. And therefore it's definitely what they would expect.
Yeah, you just gave me flashbacks, Rebecca, to a new simulation I built and ran for the first time, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks ago. It's part of my product owner program. And it's simulating managing a PI backlog and dealing with events that are going to disrupt it as the PI goes by. And to keep it really simple, I just had fixed size boxes for sprint capacity, and then different backlog items were different sizes, so you couldn't physically fit more than a certain number into the box. So no numbers or velocity or story points, just how much fits and then what happens as things change. And in keeping it all really simple, I went, I'm just going to color code the different types of story and no words on them, because I've got the size, I've got the color, that's all I need. And I didn't bother laminating for the first play test. I just printed. I went, yeah, okay, I'll learn some things. And nobody tore it. But of course, what happened? One of the people who played was colorblind. And so they had no idea what was happening with the color scheme. It's like, oh, maybe I do need to write something on it in case somebody's colorblind. And it was just the simplest thing in terms of what happened when it faced a real human. And made me very glad I hadn't spent hours with the laminator and a guillotine.
Do you have one at your house?
Yeah.
Note to self: Mark has backyard guillotine. Let's keep that in mind, Rebecca.
Not worried.
Mark's not
I'm pretty
very
sure I
good
could
with parents. Sorry, what was that, Rebecca?
I'm pretty sure I can tackle Mark before he can tackle me. Very confident in my wrangling skills.
I'm going to find a way to put that to the test in DC.
We'll see. Seems
Unlikely.
maybe not the week to do that. In a DC, what do you guys think you might want to talk about at DC?
Oh, just a little portfolio here and there, probably. Something like that. I mean, submissions are in. It's over, right? We can. It's signed, sealed, and delivered, and we don't get to change anything between now and then.
I still ask what you want to talk about. Which is not what you will talk about. I was curious, did both of you end up going with portfolio? There were a lot of different like options. That's where you landed?
I did have a non-portfolio option that was going to be fun up until I carefully read the track guidance and realized that it had nowhere to live.
Mm.
Note to self, next time read the detailed guidance on what tracks are before you build the talk decks.
That's actually been like most of the people who have been running ideas by me, that's like the first thing I say is, did you read the tracks? Oh no. Well, you might want to read them before you spend a lot of time creating a submission that really doesn't fit anywhere.
Well, I'd looked at the track names. I just hadn't read the PDF file that said this is specifically what we'd like inside each track. But it was a good looking talk, and I'll probably put it out as a webinar or something.
Yeah, I did kind of two sides. I submitted two different perspectives on what's their adjacent concepts, but one's the portfolio viewpoint and evolving portfolios, kind of Kaizen and Kaikaku applied to the portfolio, if I want to use the shorthand. But the other one is kind of a view of one value stream that tracks with the book that Gareth and I are writing. So it's really the growth and evolution and ultimate reintegration of a value stream into Horizon One, and the kind of what are the key moments that, if you think about the spotlights you need to pay attention to from decisions, what are the places it can go horribly right or wrong depending on the decisions you make.
Is that
So I'm actually more excited about that one, but
is that the view from a canoe version?
I guess it could be. That's an interesting metaphor to weave through.
Weren't you there for the? I'm pretty sure it was a coffee club where we wound up talking about the, if you're sitting on a kayak in a river, what would happen if you looked at your value stream through the lens of the kayak rider?
I don't think that was a coffee club. I was not on it because I just
maybe it was a Saturday session. I definitely remember the conversation.
I remember the conversation. So it's not that actually. It's more like it would be more what's the life cycle of the river than the perspective of the canoe. Starts as a little stream, and then it continues to get snow melt from above, and over time it cuts a deeper and deeper channel, and at times it encounters very large boulders and has to find new routes around them, creating this weaving across the plains.
I think that might fall under clever but not clear.
Nonsense. Oh no, you're right, it falls under nonsense. Mark challenged me to make my metaphor work. I had to try.
You totally didn't nail it. Good job.
You're supposed to ask me what I learned from this, Rebecca. Please be nice.
Oh, okay. What did you learn from that, Eric?
Not to try out new metaphors in front of Rebecca, apparently.
Well, let's face it, it was a slow start yesterday with the pink sheet on the franchise metaphor. So
yeah, that one's in the graveyard now.
It's like, surely if we bend ourselves hard enough, we can make it work. Sorry, Rebecca, go on.
Oh, you're good. You guys spent, I think like 3 entire weeks away from each other. Was that painful? Did
That
your
was very
hearts
painful.
hurt?
Very painful.
It was very lonely. My brain didn't even turn on for 3 weeks.
While you were on vacation, did you buy some BFF necklaces or bracelets to give?
I haven't shared yet.
Giving it away. So I did have a lot of knew when you came back, Eric, not because you said you came back. It was because Mark stopped talking to me. So I was like, oh, he's back.
So how's it feel to be the backup friend, Rebecca?
The substitute friend? Yeah, whatever. Cool. I understand.
No, I don't know. It was interesting, like, because the kayak was very gone. I literally didn't turn my phone on the entire week. I took all my pictures with Chelsea's phone. I was completely disconnected by design, even though there was signal at a remarkable portion of the coastline, given how wild it was, including the very strong internet signals coming off the mega yacht. Apparently, it was the founder of WhatsApp who has and sold his business. His mega yacht was filling the entire bay with clean, very strong internet signal. But coming from that to a week of kind of being online, but mostly focused on enjoying my last week in La Paz and getting everything packed up, to 2 weeks of plenty of good signal, but driving so I couldn't mess with my phone. So it's like 3 different modes of non-interaction. And then getting to Colorado and intentionally not starting any new threads or any new work topics until yesterday, but being interactive and talking to people again.
But we did get a
Driving and not being able to talk on your phone is tough. At least it is for me, because like you also have like your watch that's getting stuff. So it's like you're trying to just focus, but it's like that's usually
Mm.
something I would answer. That's usually something I would answer.
So
So
I did that for a long time, and I actually turned my watch notifications almost completely off. There's a couple priority messages that sources I let through, but the only thing that pops up on my watch consistently is calendars to be like, oh, I should be here in 5 minutes, because that's pretty important.
yeah, I find it really helpful like throughout the week, but not very helpful if you're trying to disconnect. It more just like stresses me out than is helpful.
Maybe there's like the same future where people carry their work phone and their personal phone all the time. Maybe you have your work watch and your weekend watch.
I never got on board with that whole other thing either. People still do that, and I'm always like, I don't fully get it. I've seen people that actually have like 3 phones. They've got like a work phone, a personal phone for like random people who are friends, and then they have like a family phone. Like don't you can make different ringtones for people. Like why you
it's
don't have to carry like 3 different devices.
it's just
But
because they're old,
whatever.
Rebecca. Because,
Oh, okay.
well, if they were young, they wouldn't need 3 phones because nobody in their personal life would use their personal phone number.
Yeah, you don't answer. I mean, the only person I actually answer the phone from anymore is my mother. 'Cause nobody else would be actually calling me. They would be texting me or slacking me or something.
Well, I mean, I've been educated by Max that only old people use phone numbers.
Well, she's
Does
not
that
wrong.
does that include WhatsApp?
What?
Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Does that include WhatsApp?
yeah. He
Because
gave me a
Mexico, it's all WhatsApp.
I actually only use WhatsApp to talk to my rabbi.
Oh,
That's it. For whatever
no.
reason, that's his preferred method, and I don't argue with my rabbi.
Well,
enjoys.
given the reputation
Yeah,
of rabbis for being good at arguing, it might be a losing proposition.
it's not a good choice to make in your life. Yeah.
She tried that once. That was many years ago.
So I will
She's so
say,
well
you,
educated now.
Rebecca, on the topic of, did we miss each other? We had 3.5 hours yesterday morning, and it was lovely to have to spin the brain up. I
Oh,
got to the end of the 3.5 hours, walked out and said to Carrie, Eric's back. She looked over and went, is your brain happy, dear?
Now,
that's
the flip side of that, it was 3.5 hours of a 3-hour planned session. So I walked out and it was dark outside and everybody else was going to bed. And I'm like, I'm tired now. That was great, but I'm tired.
is that like instead of a work spouse, you have a brain spouse?
Yeah, 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 sure. It's a external coprocessor.
Something. But you're very cute, both of you. It's cute that you miss each other, and it's cute that you have to find other people to barely keep up talking with you while the other person's gone. Adorbs is
It's
what
not that
some
I
might
it's
say.
not that I don't love you anymore, Rebecca. It's just that when Eric wakes
Oh
up,
no,
he
I'm
says
good.
hello.
I can have you back.
And Eric wakes up, he says hello. I don't think you're uniformly the first person I message, but occasionally.
I'd be worried if it was uniform.
Mm.
On more serious notes, back to Washington.
Yes.
So I went up 2 talks after I madly scrambled on the original one that was misguided. So I've got one on moving towards value stream funding and iterative and incremental approaches to changing your funding model. That'd be a really fun talk to give if it gets through. the other one's on the epic life cycle, design thinking, epic teams, really making sure you're sort of revitalizing the whole epic life cycle, which again would be a fun talk. It was funny doing the videos they made us do this time to explain why you're passionate about the talk. I was like,
I have a question
am I giving myself
for
away?
you.
Yeah, what's your question, Rebecca?
I actually get this question a lot, so I figure I'll pass it on to you guys for if people watch this video. If it's your first time submitting to a Safe Summit, what are the things that you think people should really think about?
Well, firstly, read the track guidance.
Even pay them to say that, people.
Sounds like a painful lesson.
I don't know. Where would you start, Eric? You're the professional at this stuff. I'm just learning from the master.
You get this a
Oh,
lot because for a lot of people, this will also be like the first public summit they speak at. So they're
yeah,
curious
I
about.
I had a really good conversation about this with Emily Lint maybe 6 months ago. I forget exactly where. Actually, I think it might have been the last in Nashville at the Safe Summit, so half a year. And it was interesting. I think the answer to that depends on where you're coming from in your career. I think there's people that are a certain point in their career, they have stories that are just so compelling that the message is say what you believe and what you learned because people are just going to want to hear it that much. Like there are senior executives that I would give anything just to hear them get on stage and babble for half an hour because I know that they've been through so much and I just want to hear their stories. And if you've got if the luxury, the privilege of having that space, it kind of starts there. On the other hand, if you don't have that space, you probably certainly still have a story to tell, something powerful. But I would say focus on the outcomes first. What's not necessarily your reason for wanting to tell the story, but why would the people in the audience want you to tell the story that you have in mind? And really take that personal interest of yours and let the hypothetical audience pull it out of you so that it becomes a narrative, so that it gets cleaner, gets more precise, gets tight in a way that people can understand what you're going to say and why you're going to say it. And I find that things like the learning outcomes are actually the first things I write. What do I want my audience to take away from this? Not my talk, not my abstract, not my title or anything else. It's like, oh, what's the point I want to make here? What do I want them to leave with? And then come back from there. The other thing I would say is just submit. It's worth it just to go through the process. So I know people who have shied away from submitting too many times because they just have in their mind no hope of getting in, and then the first time they submit, they're in at different conferences.
Yeah, I would
So
echo the just submit. I would give a slightly different skewed on your first point of like, I feel like there's a lot of people who don't submit because they feel like they don't have a big enough title or whatever. And I've heard some incredible stories from people who like at one point they were a call center rep and then they became a product owner and then they were an RT and then they were, a scrum master, and they've just got this amazing like depth of what it looks like to transition to different roles and start to think in different ways. And I would love to hear those stories. And there's like sometimes this fear of like, yeah, but I'm not powerful enough or big enough or whatever, which I
yeah,
think is silly.
I think the depth of experience actually captures better what I was trying to say than just the title element. It's that if you just have that compelling of a story, get that story out.
Yeah, I don't think people always know that they have that. I think they're like, this was like this was my life, and I don't know why it would be any different than anybody else's life.
Yeah.
So but I do like the point on like what's like the gift you want to give to somebody else. And I think sometimes the gift that you want to give somebody else is like to know that there are so many like simple, what may seem like simple stories that can give people a lot of courage to do something game changing.
I think
Yeah, and there's
sort of,
go ahead, Mark.
sorry. All right, okay. Just sitting in the gift giving mode, I think one of the things that I've tried to become a lot more mindful about over the years is who's going to be sitting in the room and what do they need and what are they ready to hear? Because, you always start a talk going, this is something I want to talk about. But the flavor of the person who's going to be sitting in the room and whether they actually need what you naturally want to talk about or whether they need something a little bit different, and really just staying in that who's there, who's there, who's there. Can they walk out of the room feeling like something's about to be different for them? Is most definitely been growing and growing for me over the years with my conference talks. Like, don't be the wizard.
Yes, you are. And just own it. Um,
But the real power of the wizard is like having the empathy to know which spell to cast.
Magic missile, of course.
and
Every
how many
single
spell
gazebo.
slots you have before you have to rest again.
It's a cantrip now, Rebecca. Don't
We can go a whole different route for this conversation if you want.
every round forever.
I'm very upset that last night during campaign, the DM did not give us time to rest because as a sorcerer, I have like one more spell slot and it's pretty much useless. But whatever.
We just need a standard rest.
Back to Summit.
Back to darts.
Yeah. So you're new.
So the other,
And
I'm just going to grab for a second because I can sense you winding up. I'm going to grab while I'm there. There's a guy I've been following a lot. He's a LinkedIn influencer expert called Yasmin Alec. And he put a post out a couple of days ago and he said, wherever you are on your journey, there's a whole bunch of people who are just 3 steps behind you. So don't feel like you have to be at the end of the road in order to have something to share. Know that wherever you are in the journey, there are a whole bunch of people just behind you who'd benefit from what you've just learned. And I think going back to your thoughts about the first time and the confidence, Rebecca, is, don't be shy. Don't wait till you say fellow or some other silly title. When you've got something to share and you know that there's a whole bunch of people who could benefit from it, get out there, give it a crack.
And I think just adding on to that, like people who are later in the journey often forget what the beginning of the journey is like. Like Bob Galen challenged me with this at a talk one time. It's like, he said, Eric, do you even remember what it's like to be on a development team? And I was like, yeah, I do. I do kind of, if development is still like it was in 2007. Huh. I should probably go write some code or listen to more developers.
yeah, I think also like what I've discovered is this community that we have is very welcoming. And I think we give a lot of kudos to effort. And I mean, I've seen main stage talks where the person talking, their voice was shaking. It was really hard to like actually understand them. But that just actually made me lean in more because I was like, man, this person has a really real story and they're so passionate about it that this is really scary. And so I really want to hear what they have to say. And then after you talk, people will give you all sorts of feedback. And that feedback is a gift because everybody actually cares so much about you being able to tell another story the next year. So it can be, terrifying and also really amazing that everybody wants you to succeed in this community versus like going to X, Y, or Z summit where everyone's going to expect you to own that stage, do it well, do it professionally, versus like get up there and tell a story that you believe in, you're passionate about. And if it doesn't come out right, it'll help you make it better in the future.
But I think on that front, the
I
other
don't think
bit of advice is don't treat the summit as your first stage.
Mm.
Right? Get out there, speak at meetups, speak at indie agile conferences. You know, learn to tell your story and learn from what happens while you're interacting with an audience as you share your story.
yeah, like
Go.
that's great, Mark, because I'm speaking at Agile Denver, Mile High Agile tomorrow, and there will be people who I've been familiar with in the Agile community and I've known as speakers for close on 20 years, like probably 18 years. Since I first saw them speak, and they're here and they're in the same time slot as people. This is their very first time speaking from local companies. And I'll tell you what, I look at the long-term speakers and most of them, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I heard that talk in 2012 or maybe 14. I think I'll go listen to the new voice. And a lot of that is just, yeah, get out there, especially at the local events. And there are people that want to hear this stuff and that might not be who you expect it is. Like, I'm excited to go hear some of these new stories. I'm probably not going to go to the names I've known for 20 years. I'm going to go hang with them at the bar afterwards. I want to hear the new voices.
Yeah. What's interesting as former like internal person is you don't always get that chance. Like just being able to speak publicly in any way, shape, or form requires 4 or 5 lawyers to sign off on the fact that you're going to go talk, and VP approval and CEO approval and X, Y, or Z approval. So if this is like you're the thing for the year and it's your first time, I still would try it personally. 'Cause I mean, for me, I didn't get that chance to go somewhere else first.
Hmm.
First public talk was at a summit.
I did not realize that because you kind of nailed it.
Ah, very nice.
But that's just because she's awesome.
Untrue. But yeah, I think I like your point on it can matter where you're coming from and where your background is, but I just like I like the opportunity that it provides, and again, wouldn't shy away from it, but would definitely like read the tracks. So I think that's
Definitely
the
read
hard,
the tracks.
yeah, or like when people have like a pretty like good compelling story, but it just doesn't fit into the overall story you're trying to tell as a summit, and or any whether it's Safe Summit or any summit, there's some sort of like overarching thing we're trying to get across. So
And this isn't applicable directly to Safe Summit. But one of the things we did with the Agile Conference series for years was we had an explicit new voices stage. We had experience reports as a way in where you could just literally tell your story and then have a shorter speaking box. There was always intentionally a number of different ways to get different voices out there. And I don't know if they're still doing that. I haven't gone to the event since pre-COVID. But that's one thing I always appreciated in that community was the intense focus. And then the other thing that I really loved, and I think we started this like 2009. I think it's still going. Is the active mentoring cycle around the submission process.
Yeah.
And that's one I'd love to see a little bit more of. Even is there was every track had a team of volunteers drawn from the community with plus the 2 track chairs. And every submission, if you did it early enough, would get multiple rounds of feedback and ideation with that community in some form. And like the number of new voices and speakers that benefited from that was pretty astounding.
this reminds me, I don't know why it reminds me, Eric, but if you haven't yet watched the Safe podcast episode where Adam is interviewing Gene Kim, you really need to.
Oh, interesting.
They talk about you for the first 10 minutes.
I I seriously hope you're jesting.
I am not. I was like, wow, okay. It's I think you'll find it fun and a little bit making you blush, but pretty fun.
Excellent, I think.
Sorry
Where
to
do I?
hear.
I'm not supposed to ask on this channel, like, where I find that podcast, am I?
I will find it for you, and then maybe it can link into this chat too, because it's definitely one for
Nope,
people to watch to know you.
Nope, I'm here. It's the Safe Business Agility Podcast. It's at scaledagile.com/resources.
So, knowing that you're on a hard time box, Rebecca, we haven't talked about you in Washington yet. Have you picked? Did you get to pick, or was it picked for you?
I'm on a slightly different time frame than you, so not quite there yet. It will. I think I have like probably like narrowed down area. But I won't really know for another week or two. But we do have a slightly different time frame because of how SafeNext is emerging and such.
Fair enough. I do know that I grabbed some of your sustainability stuff into my thinking about design thinking and epic life cycle.
Well, that's very flattering. It must not have been too terrible then.
Well, you very successfully shifted me towards desirability, viability, feasibility, and sustainability. Because I have been in the, maybe it's just I'm old and set in my ways, but I have been sitting in desirability, viability, feasibility for years and not moving to the expansion with sustainability. And then the first rev of your article that I read, I went, oh, yeah, okay. I can do that. I'll shift models.
Oh, well, that just made my day. Thanks. That's very meaningful. It was a tough but really nice piece to get to focus on. Lots and lots and lots and lots of research, and then it's just nice finding the scope that ended up being narrow enough to give it a little bit of depth that it deserves. So, it was good.
That it was. Now, Eric's brain is in, I have to hear Jen Kim talk about me mode.
Oh, hear Gene Kim talk about me?
It's, I'm curious. I had a lovely conversation with him in Berlin because I haven't caught up with him for several years now.
I
But
would
I'm
have warned
really
you
curious
it
what he
was,
said.
by the way, go listen to 10 minutes of Gene hating you. It's not that.
I am trying to think if I've ever heard Gene say negative things about other people.
No, he's just not that person. He's
I mean,
a
I met
gift of a
him
person.
I met him in Chicago when he was basically on the book tour for Phoenix Project in what it would have been 2008, 9, something like that. And we were in the kind of speaker party for the conference, which I had snuck into with a friend. And I ended up standing and I was listening to Sam Gunkenheimer, who was group product manager for Visual Studio for a long time and wrote a book on metrics and stuff, coaching a scrum master. And I wasn't in the conversation, so I was just like a couple steps back and I was listening in and observing his technique and appreciating how he was managing the power distance between them, frankly, and being very generative and supporting. And I look over and there's this guy standing next to me with almost the exact same expression on his face, watching the interaction in the same way. So we start talking about what we're seeing as Lapina Gallery, but not in a way they could hear us, with appreciation and talking. And it turns out that was Gene, and that was my introduction to him. And then we met a number of times over the years, like when he keynoted Rallion and when he keynoted the Agile conference, I introduced him and a few other things. But that was my first interaction with him, is just watching him learn from watching somebody else coach.
Well, he also explains his first interaction with you, so you should listen
Was
to
it the same story? I hope. He doesn't remember that. I'm stricken.
All right, this is really fun. Yeah, but yeah, he's such a good person. I think if I were to try to like explain and I don't, I haven't spent as much time with him, but it's like hyper curious, passionate positivity is what I get, and I think it's such a nice blend of like this insane curiosity for how the world works, blended with passion for making it work better, blended with being just insanely positive the whole time. Is really
Mhm.
really awesome.
Yep.
Oh, anyhow, Mark, I wish I could also give you a video where somebody talks about you, but maybe I'll go make one and then send you a link to it.
Yeah, I look forward to that next week, right? I am feeling like we should probably wrap. We have 8 minutes until Rebecca's hard stop. And we're not good at opening and closing any topic in 8 minutes. So
No,
it has
Even our
been...
lack of topics.
it's good to know what you're not good at.
I am going to share with you one little closing story. I had an old mate reach out to me on LinkedIn last week. And it's a guy I used to hang out with him a lot 30 years ago. And we've kind of vaguely stayed in touch since, but I wouldn't have seen him in at least 20 years. And he messaged me on LinkedIn and he said, Jasper number 6, you just gave me flashbacks. And if you remember the first episode of the Coffee Club, we did the What's Your Favorite Coffee? And I went, Jasper blend number 6. He's just listened to the first episode of the Coffee Club, had flashbacks to me raving about Jasper blend number 6 30 years ago while we were playing 500. And had to ping me on LinkedIn to go, dude, I remember you. You're still crazy.
That's lovely. I like that. Well, you are both crazy, and that's why I like you, because you're crazy smart.
It's fun to be a little bit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay,
let's take it a wrap.
Cool.
Thanks for joining us, and hopefully it will not be quite so long again before our next coffee club.